Hey guys, it's vf.miniatures Warhammer Tactics series, and today we're going to talk about my top 3 strong lists for Black Templars. If you were looking to find an easy solution for your competitive Black Templar use, or just want to play and collect them and start with something that is good at the moment, this is what I propose. So this is the first list, and I call it a balanced one. This is what I would probably use if I were to go into a tournament setting and I wanted to do as well as I can. At the moment, I would probably use something that looked a lot just like what you see now on your screen. So as you might know from my other videos, I think that balanced lists are usually better than more specialized ones in tournament environments, because you don't know what you're going to encounter, and unless your OP combo is just against everything and is good, perfectly good against all things in Warhammer 40k, which is very unlikely, it's good to have some fighting, some shooting, some anti-psychic, some anti-horde, and anti-heavy infantry vehicles, and the list goes on and on. So have a solution against all the problems, obviously with some specializations. Like in this case, obviously we're playing Black Templars, so we will have a lot of fighty units because that's what Black Templars do best. So let's see what we have here. The HQs, as you will see, will not be changing much as it was in the top 3 Space Wolves list, because usually when there is like a very good combination of HQs for a certain chapter, I find it that you are unlikely to actually be changing that no matter what your list is, because of how good those HQs are. And the same is here. So the first HQ is Chaplain Grimaldus. He's a named character. He's our best chaplain I think we have access to for a number of reasons. First being that he provides us with a 6-up shrug for our dreadnoughts, which we have 3 of in the list, and that's extremely important because Redemptor dreadnoughts are hard to deal with as they are, even harder when they have a 5-up invulnerable save, and harder still if they have a 6-up shrug. Now that gives them a lot more wounds to chew through for your opponent, and also gives you more chances to actually roll something to protect yourself, which is even more important. Another thing why I love Grimaldus so much is because he is actually saving us command points. So we don't have to spend a command point on Wise Orator because he already has the ability to do litanies on 2s. So he's basically, and he actually is a Master of Sanctity with the Wise Orator Warlord trait. So we don't need, we actually cannot have that on anyone else because we can only have 1 Master of Sanctity in the list, and that's probably his biggest weakness, because we cannot have 2 Grimalduses, we can only have 1. So the second chaplain is a regular one, which is obviously annoying. We would love to have 4 litanies to be used all the time, but unfortunately that's what we have to deal with. So Grimaldus, awesome because he does litanies on 2s, he does 2 per turn, he has the aura of 6-up shrug, he also has an aura of automatic D3+3 advances for our Black Templars, which is very strong if you need to get a jump start on your opponents and move out as fast as possible. Maybe not in this case because we don't have a lot of foot slogging troops, but still that's very good to have in your back pocket, because even though you're not using maybe that at the start of the first turn or right in the beginning of the game, you might want to use that later, maybe in the end game when you have to advance far enough and you have that D3+3 advance and then a reroll in addition because you have Black Templars. And also he's not bad in combat, he's slightly, just a tiny bit better than a regular Primaris Chaplain because his Crozius is AP 2 base. That's pretty much all he has in terms of combat to him. He is slightly more survivable, well, I should say more survivable than a regular Primaris Chaplain because he has his servitors, which are basically there to provide him with those awesome buffs like the D3+3 advance and +1 to the litanies and all that. So you don't really want to use them or to kill them, but if in a clutch moment you have to, that's much better than losing your Grimaldus. And also once per battle, if he is killed, you can decide to roll 4+ instead of doing any other on death things like fighting on death with a character. And try to resurrect him. So on a 4+, he comes back with 3 wounds remaining. So that's another very, very good thing. If somehow he gets caught out and gets destroyed, even though it's not that easy to do actually, because he has a 4+ invulnerable save, he's primary, so you can turn transhuman on him. And he has those servitors, but if he gets killed, you can still resurrect him. A very good model, and just 120 points, it's a steal. Next is High Marshal Helbrecht. Well, we've discussed this guy a number of times on this channel. I will quickly run through what makes him so good. But firstly, he's a beast. He has 8 wounds, 2+ save, 4+ invulnerable save. So a typical Primaris Captain stat line, but much better in terms of wounds. He also is a Chapter Master, so he can give a big squad of yours full rerolls to hit. Spoiler alert, that's the 10-man squad of Terminators there. And if they get wiped out, which is unlikely, but still, you can give that ability to, say, those Blade Guard vets, which we also have in the list. So a lot of versatility, a lot of usefulness from that guy for just 140 points. He's also great because he provides us with an aura of +1 strength. That's especially important if you're running a lot of lightning claws, which we're not doing in this particular list, but still it's very good for your Blade Guard. It's also great for the Terminators with the hammers, because yes, you already have a strength 8, but sometimes you need strength 9 if you're fighting against, say, Imperial Knights or Lingman Russes or Imperial Guard, other Imperial Guard tanks. So it's a useful thing to have. Not as useful as strength 10, but you can't have everything at once. As a Black Templar Chapter Master should, he's a beast in combat, and you're not paying any command points for it, which is great, because in order to get something close to that from a non-named character, you have to pay a command point for a relic, and you're already wasting a relic on that. Well, sort of wasting, and you're still not getting as much of a combat potential as you have with the Helbrecht. So he has 7 attacks at strength 8, AP 3, damage 3, a glorious profile, just good against everything. But if you run into, say, a horde, he can attack with double attacks at strength 6, which is perfect for shredding hordes because they're usually toughness 3 or toughness 2 even sometimes. And if you're fighting against something that has -1 damage, that's also great. If you decide to use that instead of damage 3, that's unlikely, but still can probably happen in a situation. And it's AP3 as well. So strength 6, AP3, damage 1, double the attack. So it's 14 attacks from this one guy. I know this, his sword is huge, but he's beastly. And all that is just for 140 points. And you also get a cool melt again on him. Why on earth would you not have him in your list? The third HQ is Primaris Chaplain on Bike, 115 points he costs, and we are spending 1 command point on him to give him the Ancient Bravery, which is basically you can roll 2 dice instead of 1 when you roll for your litanies. And we want him to provide us with the Canticle of Hate, the most important litany in the entire Space Marines book, in my opinion, because it gives you that incredibly useful +2 to charges. It's just how wonderful +2 to charges is, I cannot express. There have been so many games where my chaplain, which I run with my Deathwatch, has saved me from not rolling that charge, because there's a huge difference in probability, especially with Black Templars where you have a reroll. Whether you're rolling a 10-inch charge, which is quite far, and your opponent did not probably predict that you will have that 10-inch charge, because you have to really measure to see that. Only very experienced players can see such long charges without measuring. And when you roll that 8 and you can have a free reroll because you're Black Templars, and that's an aura, so a bunch of units can try and charge, and that aura applies to all your core character units, so it's basically your entire army in this case, and you're not charging really with Impulsor, so it's basically the entire army. So a wonderful aura, and you have to have it in your list. You could probably drop this Primaris Chaplain on Bike and have something instead of him in here. That's possible, but I think that the value he provides, considering that the Grimaldus has already taken care of your Black Templars litanies, we've chosen Litany of Divine Protection, which is the 5-up Shrug, and Fires of Devotion, which is +1 attack. Next most important thing is Canticle of Hate. So these were our HQs. That's the protective supporting bubble around our army. And now we go on into the actual meat where all those supporting elements are going to apply their buffs. So we have 2 units of 5-man Blade Guard. I love Blade Guard. They are wonderful. With Black Templars, they're even better because their toughness 4 is not as vulnerable, and you still have access to the transhuman strat if you get punched really hard and you have to defend yourself. But even still, your second squad will be protected at least at being from being wounded on 2s, which is good. And the second squad, one of the 2, has the Stratagem Champion of the Feast on it, which makes our sergeant basically a mini lieutenant because he gets an extra attack and he hits on 2s now, and he, I think, even gets an extra wound. But when we give him the Sword of Judgment for another command point, so we're spending 2 command points on this guy, but believe me, it's worth it, especially when he's protected by the Impulsor at the start of the game. So the Sword of Judgment is Strength 7, AP 3, Damage 3 sword, and it makes him a real beast. 6 attacks at Strength 7, AP 3, Damage 3, hitting on 2s. That's some character stuff right there. It's not something that even a Primaris Lieutenant has, and this guy is just a Sergeant of Blade Guard. So a wonderful combination. I really like the idea of having him. Having a guy like that. One could argue that it would be better to put the same buff on sergeant of a 10-man Terminator squad we have here. Yes, you can do that. You can make the sergeant the champion of the feast, and you can give him the extra relic upgrade. You cannot give him the sword unless you have a sword on him, which I don't think you actually can do that on a Terminator squad, assault squad. But you can make the Thunderhammer a Mastercrafted Thunderhammer, which is not bad. So it's up to you. That's something that I recommend to experiment on and see what you like more. Next, we have a Primaris Apothecary, which we are spending 2 command points on again. So we want him to be a selfless healer because he is our chief apothecary, so he can heal 1 Terminator a turn automatically. And if for some reason there are no Terminators left, we can still heal the Blade Guard. We can also heal our extremely fighty High Marshal Halbrecht and other things. So a very, very good character to have, and I really like him for what he can do. And also with the Crusader Helm relic that we give him, he has Aura of 6-up Shrug, which is very important in the first turn before you actually have the 5-up Shrug on your Terminators. And we are going to apply the 5-up Shrug on them in most cases. He gives them a 6-up Shrug, so we have at least some protection against damage 3 firearms that are going to be shot at them. Obviously, you want to hide them, but if you couldn't hide them, or if something that has been so fast that it passed through the covers, through all the obscuring stuff, you will have at least some protection. And another thing that Crusader's Helm gives you is you can turn on Assault Doctrine on 1 squad within 9 inches in your command phase. So you can buff up your Terminators so that from the first turn onwards they have AP3 on their hammers, and that's very, very important, especially now when there is no Armor of Contempt, and AP3 is actually very good again. And we have 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts. I'm not going to talk much about them. They're just wonderful. If you can take Redemptors in your list, take them. For Black Templars, they're just a must-have unit because they get 5-up invulnerable save. Well, they also get Baby Transhuman, but not a lot of things actually wound Redemptors on 2s, but still, you can benefit from that. And just a wonderful unit. It gives you everything you might want from a unit for 185 points, which I think is still very cheap for them. Blob of 10 Terminators with shields and hammers. Just a wonderful unit, always was, still is, and with Black Templars it's even better because you cannot have transhuman on them, but you have protection at least from being wounded on 2s. You get 5-up Shrug from the Litany, you get being revived by the Apothecary, so they are extremely sturdy. And to add to that, we also give the Sergeant Icon of Heinemann, which allows us to ignore AP1 and AP2. Obviously we're already ignoring AP1 because we have shields, but AP2 is very important, and you will be rolling 2s still against that. You can change that if you want to Crux Obsidians, which is -1 damage. It depends on what you want. I'm not sure what is the stats on that, which is better. It probably depends on what army you face. A squad of eliminators, these are just guys that will sit on your back objective and maybe blink off a couple of shots during the game. They are there just because you need something on your back objective, and I didn't have an extra 10 points for a squad of assault intercessors, which is probably what I would choose instead of these guys. And 2 impulsors with full array of things because we're not paying for them anymore. So, and we also don't need the shield dome because we already have a 5-weapon one. And that's why we have the missile array and multi-melt. So we have quite a bit of firepower from a thing that costs 100 points, and also 2 storm bolters, which is not bad for killing chaff. So a good solid unit now, impulsors, and they will help to transport our 2 5-man squads of blade guard across the board. Maybe even if you want, you can put AIRBRUSH in there. I don't recommend that because he probably should stay with your Terminators, buffing them up phase after phase until he eventually reaches combat, and then who knows what happens then, but I don't think you should transport him in the Impulsor. Impulsor is for your Blade Guard. So I don't have any real deep advice for using that list in any other way that I didn't talk about in my How to Play Black Templars video, which I recommend to watch, even though it's quite old and obviously was recorded before Arcs of Omen and before all the changes we've seen through the last month, but it's still valid in my opinion. So this list should be used as any other Black Templars list, and all the things that you would do are here to be used. So it's a very balanced one, so you have a lot of options, a lot of tools to deal with problems. You have a lot of anti-psychic, you have some anti-horde, you have a lot of anti-tank firepower, even though you have a lot of melee potential as well. So I'm quite pleased with that list, and let's go on into the second one. So obviously we need to have something spicy in the video, and that's what the Fleet of Foot list, how I called it, is going to be for us. So it's an unusual thing, in my opinion. We have some cool stuff here. So what I have here is basically the same set of HQs, not going to repeat everything again. What we have here is a lot of infantry, as you can guess by the name. So we have a full 20-man Primaris Crusader squad, which is a very, very cheap way to get a lot of Primaris bodies, and you are actually not paying much for them. I think you're paying on average even less than the Assault Intercessors cost, which is saying a lot. And we are giving Sigismund Seal to them as an upgrade, so we can choose before the game 1 unit, and for the entirety of the game that unit will be rerolling all their hits and wounds in melee against that particular enemy unit, which is crazy for 20 points for a 20-man unit, and that's just very good and buffs their potential immensely. So just make a right choice and the unit that you can actually reach in combat, and you will reap so the benefits just crazily. Next, we have 3 5-man Aggressor squad units. Aggressors are one of the best units in terms of points efficiency now with Black Templars, because Black Templars are solving their biggest problem. They don't have a 5-up invulnerable save, they don't have any invulnerable save, and that's extremely good for them. And also it works very well with the fact that you want to advance and you can reroll those advances with aggressors, and it's just a very good combat unit when they have that 5-up invulnerable save. Next is Primaris Apothecary. We've already discussed why he's so good. He has the same loadout here as he had before, and he's here to revive our Crusaders, but mostly aggressors because they are pricier point for point. 3 Redemptors, the same stuff. We have 1 fast attack choice here, a 3-man Outrider squad, because I felt that Outriders firstly are very efficient, again because of the 5-up invulnerable save with the Black Templars, and we need something fast that can go to far objectives. Please don't use them as people usually use bikers. They just advance them in the first turn and stand there in front of your opponent's face and are very surprised when they are wiped out in the next turn because they were right in the opponent's face and we're not doing anything. Hide them in the first or second turn. Think about how you want to use them. Other units will deal with holding objectives and keeping the board safe, you should use these guys when an opportune moment arises. Don't waste them on something stupid like sending them on an objective in the middle of the board and just attracting all kinds of firepower until they're dead. And lastly, again, the same Eliminator squad to hold our back home objective, because obviously we don't want our 20-man troops choice to do that. Why I think this list is good, because we have access to command phase OPSEC stratagem, which we can turn on any of the aggressor squads, so they are actually quite good at holding objectives. They can stand up for themselves in combat, and they're quite hard to shift. For 150 points, they're just a steal. And they also provide a lot of anti-chaff firepower, which I also appreciate. We have quite a lot of survivability innately, and also because of Apothecary. We have a decent amount of firepower. 3 Redemptors is like the bare minimum, in my opinion, now in 9th edition. So you're not getting a lot here, but in return, you get a whole bunch of anti-infantry shots. So if you're playing against something like, I don't know, Genestealer cults or Tyranids with a lot of Harmagons, you're going to feel like you have a lot of firepower. I would probably play this list more aggressively than the balanced one, just because you need to get out there and start charging stuff, again for the same reason, because you don't have as much shooting potential. So let me know what you think about this list. I wonder if you have any ideas how we can make that even better. And the last list is a Hail of Fire list, and this one is basically the reverse of the second one. So we have more shooting here, almost the same HQs, though as you can see we've dropped the Primaris Chaplain on bike because he's not perfectly efficient, and that's why we have a perfectly efficient choice in here, which is the Primaris Lieutenant, with 2 things. Firstly, he costs just 65 points, which is just crazy good for what he does for us, and we are paying for 2 things for him. Firstly is the Relic Sword of Judgment, and second is a Rides of War Warlord trait. To be honest, now when I look at that, I think a better choice would be to put the Relic Crusader's Helm from the Apothecary onto the Primaris Lieutenant, because yes, your aura of 6-up shrug will be reduced to 3 inches, but your aura of OPSEC from Rites of War will be 9 inches, which is very important, and you will still get a 9-inch aura from the Lieutenant's buff itself. So probably that's a better solution right there. Yes, you will not get the Sword of Judgment, but Primaris Lieutenant is not really there to fight. He's not mostly a fighty character. Yes, he can stand up for himself in case you need that, but it's not his main job. So same Chaplain Grimaldus, same Helbrecht, everything the same. Apothecary, again, everything's the same apart from the Relic as we discussed just now. 3 Redemptors, again, nothing changed. A 10-man blob of Terminators, because we actually need some fighting stuff here, because we don't have as much as we had in the previous 2 lists, where we had either Blade Guard or Aggressors or Troops. Here we need to have that blob squad, which we can throw at someone and just munch through a lot of stuff. And now the fast attacks and heavy supports. So in addition to 3 Redemptors, we also have 2 Invader ATVs with Multi-Meltas. These are very fast. They're quite good with Black Templars thanks to the 5-up invulnerable save. They are fast, as I said, so they can hold the objectives far away. Obviously, don't put them too close to your opponent because they will be charged and locked. Yes, you can fall back and shoot with them for 1 command point, but you don't want to waste that command point. So that's extra 2 multi-melter shots from each of these. And in the heavy support, we have a 3-man Eliminator squad. Again, it's here for holding the home objective, and 2 5-man Eradicator squads. And we can use the wonderful fact that we can now send units to reserve for free and put them in reserve, either both or 1 squad, depending on what your tactical plan is, and protect them from firepower in the first turns, and then put them somewhere from the side of the table and shoot whatever we want to. They have heavy melter rifles because I believe that these are much better than the regular ones. Obviously, we're not as awesome in this case as the Iron Hands, because for the Iron Hands, it's just an auto take choice. You even don't have to think about that. In our case, we will be suffering that -1 to hit from moving and shooting in any case, but I still think that heavy melter rifles are better at dealing with the stuff that you want eradicators to deal with. And we have some things to protect the eradicators with. And also one squad has Crux Obsidian because I had some points spare, and that's basically our -1 damage on the Sergeant. Not really important in this case. If you have a better idea how to spend those points, feel free to do so, but I just wanted to allow some protection for that 5-man squad. And each of the 5-man eradicator squads have a multi-melter each as well, so they are packed full of firepower. I don't know why I have 3 heavy melter rifles on each here. There should be 4 heavy melter rifles because it's a 5-man squad. I guess it's a typo. So that is the idea of this hail fire list. It's more of a shooty solution if that's what you like. Maybe you feel better at keeping the distance between your army and your opponents, even when you play a melee chapter. Maybe not what I would do, but there is an argument that may be more efficient in some cases against some matchups. So it's definitely not a bad idea, hence the creation of this list. So these were my top 3 strong list builds for Black Templars. Let me know what you think about them in the comment section below. I'm really interested in what you think. You guys often point out things that I did not catch in my own list, which I appreciate hugely. And I hope this video was useful to you, and I'll see you next time.